Good evening, everybody. Sorry for the delay. How is everyone out there? All right. Welcome back. Happy 11 weeks till the exam. I'm going to allow Zoom to pop up here. So if you, hopefully you guys all can hear me all right. Let's make sure we're good on Facebook. Okay. If you're joining us on Facebook, shout out in the comments. Give us a like. If you're joining us on Zoom, welcome. Welcome. All right, I'm going to share my screen. We're going to get started. All right, greetings everyone once again. Welcome back to our weekly live stream from Athletes in AP History. My name is Joe Sebastian. I am so happy to have all of you here. Really excited to get started about tonight's topic. Just a little background if this is your first live stream. So again, this is our Facebook group, Athletes in AP History, where we help students earn top scores on their AP exams, specifically student athletes, but you don't necessarily have to be a student athlete to be in the group. But basically it's built around the busy student athlete. Our principles are that athletes shouldn't have to sacrifice their sport to get a high score on their exam and vice versa. So we share weekly live streams. We had a guest on last week. We share weekly tips and tricks for the AP exams. This week with 11 weeks out, we're going to look at some exam secrets on how to get ready for the exam. So I'm really excited for all of you joining us. We are fastly approaching 800 group members, and you'll see in a minute here why I think this group can really expand even more, well beyond 800 in the near future, just by the sheer number of people that take the exam every year. So we'll get started. So, how to get ready for your AP exam. So when you look at your AP exam as a whole, right? We focus on AP history right now, AP government, AP human geography. But when you look at the statistics from the past couple of years on the hardest exams to pass, and the top 10 exams, the hardest to pass. So 1 is actually physics 1, 2 is environmental science, and 3 is chemistry. But the 5 courses that we offer for our masterclass currently are in the top 10 of hardest AP exams to pass. So the top being US government, followed actually by 4, 5, and 6. So US history, human geography, and actually 7 too, European history, and then rounding in number 10, AP world. And then stats and English literature are in there at 8 and 9. So 5 out of the 10 hardest AP exams, we offer a masterclass. We designed our masterclass around to support. It is what actually I am certified to teach in as a certified social studies teacher and licensed in both AP and IB. So those exams are hard, and some of the hardest primarily because of how you're evaluating the exam. There is a slight misalignment between your exam, or between your class and the exam, because you cover content in your course. You have to know a lot of content. You have to have a lot of content knowledge, but the exam asks you to apply and to analyze all of that content in meaningful ways by stimulus-based multiple choice questions and free response questions, the FRQs, the essays. So we're going to talk about more what that looks like tonight, because some of the conversations I had with other parents, some students, they're not even really sure how they're going to be evaluated. So if you don't know how you're going to be evaluated, how can you possibly pass this exam? So I found that interesting that the top 10 hardest AP exams, 5 of them, we currently offer a masterclass for. And it is something that, not everyone thinks it's going to go one way, and it actually ends up going another way. The most popular AP exams out there, so the top 7, for some reason, College Board didn't give me the top 10. But the AP English is the top with the most. I think that's well over 500,000 students take that exam every year, followed by AP US History, AP English, and then AP World. And then the bottom three there are AP Psych, Government, and Calculus. So more students, there's about 2 million students. Now I know there's some crossover here, but there's some 2 million students that take these top 4 exams each and every year. And as we said, 3 of those are in the top 10 hardest exams to pass. So just something to keep in mind before we kind of dive into tonight's content. So, oh, in the Q&A, people that are joining us on Zoom, the Q&A is open. So please feel free to pop a question in there if you have any. We'll allow for some question and answers as we go on. So once again, top 10 hardest exams, most popular exams. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but the fastest ways to not score a 5. So a lot of students I talk to, a lot of families I talk to, and parents talk in terms of some of these instances of things that we have or the myths we have around the exam. And I think the biggest one is the disconnect between your grade in the class and how ready you are for the exam. Unfortunately, the grade technically has no direct correlation with how well you're going to do on the exam. A lot of students have good grades in the class, but remember, the course is a standardized College Board curriculum that is evaluated by College Board, but is evaluated by graders through College Board. Your class, your assessments, and the way you are graded is left up to the autonomy of the teacher. So every teacher could potentially have a different way of grading. So no matter how you're doing on it, does not necessarily directly correlate with what is going to be tested and how you're going to be scored. The other big myth out there is that schools prepare students for the exam. Though there are some that do, it is not nearly enough. And we'll show you that here in a minute too, because we've had on the Facebook page for a little bit. It's been pretty popular. And we'll kind of go into this for a second, the AP exam game plan. If you reached out to me for a copy, I dropped a Google link in your messages. It should be in your message request. And some people have been having a hard time opening the link. If you're trying to open a link on a phone, it might be a little difficult. I made it a copyable Google Doc, so you can't edit it until you make a copy of it. That usually works best on a desktop or a laptop. If you want me to email it to you, I can, just let me know. I'll probably reach out to everyone on there and email them a copy. But going back to that original point, that schools are still covering content. If you see where we're at right now, depending on when your test is, if it's in the first week of AP exams or the second week, we're 11 to 12 weeks away from the exam. If you actually don't want to overburden yourself and cram for the exam, you should be pacing yourself out now. You should be starting now with a good, thorough review. I will tell you, most of my onboarding for masterclass for test prep happens between 8 and 12 weeks. I have onboarded kids up until 4 weeks, but in terms of work-life balance or extracurricular and athletic and academic life balance, you really want to give yourself pacing now. And most of the content is not done being taught up until about April, just based on the pacing guides that are out there. So best case scenario, you're spending the month of April test prepping. That doesn't always happen. So the schools aren't really necessarily designed to get you a 5. They're designed to help you pass. So passing looks good on a school. 5s look great on schools, but really the passing number is the most important number for schools. So that is our fallacy number 2, that schools will prepare us for the exam. The other big myth of scoring a 5 is relying on free resources out there. There are a ton of great free resources out there. However, if you're looking for alignment to the College Board exam, the rigor will not be there. Case in point, College Board controls a lot of those tests. So unless you're looking on previous exams for the stimulus-based questions, you're technically not going to be directly aligned. That is why it is worth to pay the small amount of money, like $25, and buy a review book. I have a couple recommendations. There are other great ones out there, but you definitely want to at least invest a little bit of money in getting a quality review book that is aligned to a college board makes the curriculum, because Quizlet, though great for content knowledge, is not what an AP exam will look like, nor is study.com or things like that. The other big myth of scoring a 5 is only practicing multiple choice questions, and I'll show you that why when we talk about the AP exam structure. But all these exams have free response questions. So if you're just practicing the content, you're only preparing yourself to pass less than 50% of the exam. Another way not to score a 5, practicing tests without a time limit. So I've talked to a bunch of students who are struggling with LEQs and DBQs, or they're in class and they're doing an outline, or they're spending days on DBQs or outlining, or they're take-home DBQs, or they're working as a group. If that sounds like you, it sounds like your class, you're not alone. There are a lot of them out there. That is a great way to introduce students to the FRQs. But the FRQs are in a time constraint. And if we do not practice that time under pressure and practice it repeatedly, multiple times, we are setting ourselves up for failure. Finding out the day of the test what an hour feels like to write a DBQ is not the time you want to do it, nor is it for any free response question. You have to consistently practice like you're going to play, like you're going to perform on those exams. The fifth one I have up there is, sorry, that was the fifth one. Practice the writing and getting no feedback. So if you want to move into the upper echelon of test prep and actually start practicing the writing, that's awesome. I recommend that for everybody. So you're practicing the multiple choice and you're practicing the writing. But if you get zero feedback on your writing, that is kind of like a waste of time. Why I say that is because you do not have a clear understanding necessarily of where you're going. So even if you can get a parent to look at the rubric and give you some feedback, that's better than nothing. But just writing for the sake of writing and getting no feedback and reflecting and improving will not help you exponentially make a higher score. So definitely want to get some feedback. If your teachers have study times, if you have a tutor, get feedback on your writing that was timed. And then the seventh one we've added is not knowing how you are getting evaluated. And that is why we are here today, because I've heard a lot of that. We don't know what we don't know. We don't even know how the score breaks down. So I wanted to look at those 5 exams broken down. So a couple of things to remember as we go through this. 50% of the exams students pass, average 50% of these students pass the exam with a 3. So a 3 is passing. Some colleges, mostly state schools, will accept a 3 for college credit. Not all the time, though. That's your benchmark of passing. 25% of students roughly will earn a 4, and that usually gets you college credit. But about 10 to 15% will score a 5, and we'll show you that. So the caveat here is to be in the top 10, you have to do what the under 90% won't do. So how these exams are broken down, just so you know statistically. So this was from 2022. APUSH, AP US History, AP World, AP European History, AP Human Geography, and AP Government. So in AP US History, only 10% of students who took the exam, and that was 450,000 students, 10% got a 5. AP World, 314,000 students took the exam, 13% got a 5. AP European History, less students took that exam. It's 80,000. It's not that popular of a course, but 13% got a 5. AP Human Geography, I think 221,000, 15% got a 5. And then AP Government, 280,000, 12% got a 5. So you do see how this is distributed. And again, roughly, you add all those up, the 5, 4s, and 3s, you have roughly around 50%, which is pretty close. World was 62%, US history was 48%, European history was 54%, human geography 52%, and AP government 49% of students passing. So keep that in mind as we go through this. Everyone wants to get a 5. Everyone thinks they're getting a 5, but there's the statistics of who does. So a couple truths to keep in mind as we go through this. One, you're not going to memorize everything. That is probably the biggest mistake we make when we test prep, when we review, is that we think we have to memorize every single thing, especially in history. You're not going to. Guess what? I am certified in AP history. I don't know everything there is to know about history either. It's okay. It's your application, because contextualization is a historical thinking skill. It is an AP tested skill. And so you start figuring that stuff out as you go through, but it is okay to not know everything. Every living stat is not going to be tested. It's your application of scenario-based questions on stimulus-based questions in your MCQs. That is what matters. And remember, only 40 to 50% of your score is multiple choice based. And I'm going to show you how that breaks down here in a minute, why the stimulus-based questions are important. And then over 50% of your score is going to be writing based. So with your history, it's going to be 60%. So if you don't prepare for any of this, trust me, you are preparing to fail. Going in there without any preparation, whether it's school, tutoring, test prep on your own, you're preparing to fail. You're not setting yourself up in the best case scenario for success. So make sure you dedicate some time to review some of the stuff on your own. And my big saying I say to a lot of the students that work with us, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So the best way to reduce test anxiety is by being exposed to what it feels like in a controlled environment. So what I mean by that is, when you sit down to take a DBQ or an LAQ or any type of FRQ, the first time, like I said before, should not be when you take the test. I need to feel comfortable within the time limit. So I'm going to practice within the time limit over and over again until I am comfortable being uncomfortable. I know that is some slightly discomfort, but I know how to pace myself, and it only comes from practice. So that is something to keep in mind as we look through this. So my first breakdown is how the exams are graded and what is on the exam. So this applies for AP history, AP European history, AP US history, AP world history. All three of those exams are structured the exact same way, with the only caveat being the content is different. So if you know if you're an AP world student going to AP US history, AP US history or AP Euro, the exam looks very similar. It's just the content that's different. So part one is broken down into 2 parts. 55 multiple choice questions in 55 minutes. That makes up 40% of your score. Usually the questions appear in sets of 3 and 4. Students analyze historical texts, interpretations, and evidence. So though content knowledge is important, it is not the only thing. Like, you need to understand what the stimulus is telling you and then answer the questions. And there's a lot of primary and secondary sources, images, graphs, and maps that are included in this. The second part of part 1, so part B, are 3 short answer questions. So that is 40 minutes, and that is 20% of your score. So part 1, 60% of your score, but 20% is writing. There will be a primary source-based question, there will be a secondary source-based question, and there'll be a question, usually 3 or 4, that you get to choose how to answer it. There's no stimulus, just straight 3 questions one way, 3 questions another way. You choose which one you want to answer. That's 20% of your score. Then comes part 2. And that is, first part is the DBQ, 60 minutes. That is where you are breaking down 7 documents. They're either primary or secondary sources, and you're usually answering a question. Most of the questions sometimes are to what extent or to evaluate, but you have all the evidence there in those documents, and you have to make a historical argument based on those 7 documents. That makes up 25% of your score. So 1 out of 4 points on your AP exam is coming from the DBQ. And then finally, the LEQ, the long essay question, or the long essay question, which is, there's 3 question options, and they're usually banded by different time periods in your specific AP history. You have 40 minutes to answer those questions, one of those questions, one of 3 of those questions, and that is worth 15% of your score. So if you add up all these 3, that's 60% of your score comes from writing. So you better be prepared to answer the writing part of this under time limit if you want to be successful. Going down to AP Human Geography, it is different. So it is broken up 50% score and 50% score. So section 1 is multiple choice. It is 60 questions. You get 60 minutes. So one question per minute. Individual questions, set-based questions, and approximately 30 to 40% of the multiple choice questions will reference the stimulus material, including a map or a table or chart or graph, and they're equally divided between qualitative and quantitative analysis. The second part of the AP Human Geography exam is the free response questions. You have 3 free response questions. One does not have any stimuli. The second one has a stimulus of a data image or a map, and the third includes 2 stimuli. And all 3 of those questions are broken down into 7 parts. So usually A through, what is that, F, G, H. And usually you have to answer it kind of line by line, and there's tips and tricks on how to answer those, but they're pretty straightforward. They're not obscure like part B of your AP history exams. So that's a 50-50 split of your grade. So you have to know how to do both to be successful there. And then finally, AP American Government. So this is where it gets a little bit longer. It's still a 50-50 split like AP Human Geography, but the questions are much more complex. You have 55 questions, 80 minutes to analyze them. There's about 30 of those 55 questions will have no stimulus, just sheer content-based questions. And then you'll have set-based questions, quantitative, qualitative, and visual analysis make up the rest of those questions, about 25 on your exam. And you have 80 minutes to do that, so an hour and 20 minutes. And then section 2 is the free response. You have 100 minutes, so 1 hour and 40 minutes to answer 4 questions, a concept application, quantitative analysis, a SCOTUS, Supreme Court of the United States comparison, and an argumentative essay. They all have different sets of skills that you need to do well, and that totals up your 50% score. So that is how they're broken down. You definitely need to at least look at some of this stuff before you dive in. So I can give this guide to anyone that wants it. I have links here to the College Board sites for, in particular, in these AP History, Government, and Human Geography courses in terms of your scoring guidelines. All of this is free on College Board, and it does show you past exams, what they were looking for. So it is a great resource if you're not going to invest in tutoring, if you're not going to if you're not getting feedback from the school, you have College Board that has past exams that are released that you could at least start practicing. So what I like about this, what I don't like about this is they make rubrics overly complex, but they do tell you exactly how to get each point for the different FRQs. Specifically, this one is for the DBQ, and they're broken down like that. I have actually easier to read DBQs, but straight up, that's what College Board thinks a quality rubric is. But this does break down what example responses would get those points. So in theory, you could practice on your own and get some feedback from College Board. Again, this is all free for on the internet that college releases. And the same is for AP Human Geography and AP Government. So it's a good starting place to use, but you got to know what you're looking for. So they do have information on what would be a quality answer for all those questions on AP Human Geography, and so on and so forth for AP Government. Okay, so the game plan. Now, I do have one for AP Human Geography and AP Government if you are interested. Someone reached out with an AP Geography one, and I was able to send them one. So here's what I'm talking about in terms of like giving yourself ample time. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible, because nothing's impossible. I do group this a little bit differently when I personalize game plans for students. But if you wanted to review dedicate yourself to a period or a unit per week in AP History, if you see right there, we are now at February 13th. We are 11 weeks to go. You would already have to double up one period if you wanted to build a game plan like this. Now, most review books double up some of the units. That's how I do it. So you do have flexibility there. But if you were to do it on your own, you need to get to it now and start reviewing these periods, because there's a lot of information to review. And I kind of give you a guideline of what FRQ you should practice each week to give yourself enough exposure. All my masterclass students are going to be I'm going to give them a baseline about 8 weeks out. I might adjust for some, but why I do 8 weeks out is majority of the content is done by March. There's still more content to know. There's a couple more weeks. Every school is different, but you should be able to see a good result on the baseline of where they are and where they need to be if you get a AP review book and take a baseline exam. So I'll be giving all my students a baseline exam at around that time, just to see where they are, so that when we do practice exams on the back end, we can see how much they've grown. And the baseline exam helps us identify content to review in a specific manner. So keep that in mind. AP History's Euro and APUSH, your exams are May 5th, so that's not that far away. And then AP World is at May 11th. So if you do want a copy of this, I can email it to you, the link, that you'll make your own copy for that as well. Okay, so if you have any questions before I start the shutdown, go ahead and ask them right now. The webinar chat or the question answer for Zoom is open, and if you have questions on Facebook, please feel free to drop a question on there. But just a little plug for the masterclass, because we are still enrolling students. What is the masterclass? It is our test prep program where we do a comprehensive content review. We do all the FRQ how-tos. We give personalized feedback, proctored time exams, and predictive scoring, so you'll know pretty closely where you're scoring. And all comes with unlimited one-on-one coaching. So if you want more information on that, feel free to reach out. But I am going to stop this screen share right now and open it up for questions. So anyone have any questions tonight regarding that? Doesn't seem like it. All right. Well, if there are no questions, I'm going to shut it down right now. I really appreciate you all joining us tonight. Hopefully that was beneficial. Oh, we do have one question. AP Human Geography exam. I believe it's May 4th. I will double check that right now. AP Human Geography exam is May 4th at 8 a.m. local. Anyone else? Thank you for that question. Other questions? I'm happy to stay on. Let's see. All right. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I hope you all have a good evening, and we'll be right back here Monday for another live stream, and we'll look at another topic to go through. Appreciate you all. Appreciate your time. See you soon.